Well, it's been a while since I've updated you on where the Big 12 stands in relation to the Pac 12 and every other conference in the country. There is mounting evidence to support the fact that the Big 12 is going to be right there with the Pac 12 and the ACC, even with the new members, for years to come. Welcome into the YouTube channel. I am John Kurtz. I talk college football every day on this channel. Right now, Big 12 football and conference realignment specifically. Please consider subscribing if you have not. So this is a train that we've been riding for a long time here. It's been a part of this long battle with the national media and just the general narrative about the Big 12 ever since conference realignment was kicked into gear back in July. And we have seen numbers that continue to support, not just from a TV rating standpoint, but particularly from an on-field standpoint, that the Big 12, the new look league, is going to be able to compete with every Power 5 conference out there except for the Big 10 and the SEC, which is the same story for everybody in the college football world. We're looking at a Big 2 and everybody else. Here's the latest round of data. Okay, so first, we're going to go away from some of the computer data and just more to the traditional data. Let's look at a snapshot in time right now of where the Big 12 sits in the AP Top 25. So there are 5 Big 12 teams in the Top 25 right now. Of course, you have number 2 Cincinnati, number 15 Oklahoma State, number 16 Baylor, number 22 Iowa State, and number 25 BYU. Obviously, we're talking about the new Big 12 here. Now, I will say, that looks great, and it's awesome in a tweet to be able to say, hey, 5 of the 12 Big 12 teams in the new look league are ranked in the top 25, but Iowa State kind of screwed things up here. As good as it looks to have 5 teams ranked in the top 25, 5 of the 12, it would have been better if Iowa State would have lost to Oklahoma State to say, hey, there are only 4 teams ranked, but 2 of them are legitimate college football playoff contenders. That, of course, being if Oklahoma State would have won. But I digress. The 5 of 12 is great in terms of statistics and where that number ranks, because that's 42% of the league right now ranked in the top 25. The SEC, for instance, right now, only at 43%. The Big Ten is at 36%. The Pac-12 laughably at 8%. They, of course, only have Oregon. And the ACC is at 14%. Another league having a very down year with the traditional power Clemson out of the top 25. So, in a perfect world, you'd rather have Iowa State unranked, both Cincinnati and Oklahoma State unbeaten and in the top 10. Oklahoma State, even in an expanded playoff right now with only 1 loss, probably not getting there, probably not really in that conversation with the loss to Iowa State. But I digress. You can make a nice case and spruce up some tweets and show here the depth of the league with the Big 12, combined with a power at the top in Cincinnati, a legitimate player for the college football playoff. And that's an important idea here because everything has been focused on losing Oklahoma and Texas and the brand value and the competition value, like what the Big 12 has done with Oklahoma, how Oklahoma has pulled the Big 12 along for so long. Well, Cincinnati right there is just as competitive, if not more, up at the top of the national standings than OU. We'll see what happens when the college football playoff rankings actually come out and where Cincinnati is in relation to Oklahoma. But right now, it's tough to argue that they're not at least basically on the same level this year. So that's a huge selling point for the league right now, regardless of what you think is going to happen moving forward and how long Luke Fickell stays there long term. The Big 12 right now has the profile that you would want out of the new league. One team way up at the top that can carry the water for the league in the playoff, and then just a deep league with some good teams that are in that 15 to 25 range. And I think that's the best case scenario of how the league would look moving forward. Now, another big part of all of this has been looking at the computer rankings. If you're not as into the AP Top 25, okay, what about the computer rankings? Well, Jeffrey Fuller, who has done a great job, it's at JJFuller72 on Twitter. You should follow him and check out what he does, putting together the composite computer rankings every single week. So he has done this for this week and given the latest update on where the conferences stand, and he's done it with the new leagues. So the new Big 12, the new SEC, and even the new AAC with the additions that they have made here within the last week. And here is what his data shows from the composite computer rankings. The SEC, number 1 at 37. That's the average team ranking, 37. The Big 10 right behind at 40. But the Big 12, not too far behind the Big 10. The new Big 12, mind you, at 46. The ACC, 52. Pac-12, 64. Closer to the Mountain West at 71 than they are to the Big 12, certainly. The AAC, you'll also notice, is really hurting after having lost the 3 teams that they did in the new split with the conferences here, and they're at 88. So a couple of observations. Not only is the new Big 12 the 3rd best conference here, but it's also not very far behind the current iteration of the Big 12, which Jeffrey Fuller also mapped out. that would be sitting right now at 43. So an average team ranking of 43 for the Big 12 with Texas and OU, an average team ranking of 46 for the Big 12 with the 4 new schools and no Texas and Oklahoma, which again shows you right now Cincy this year obviously is holding up with OU. And the Pac-12 continues to be closer to the Mountain West than the Big 12, and actually is almost equally as close to the Sun Belt this year as it is to the Big 12. Just one spot off there. There's one spot difference between where the Pac-12 is at in relation to the Sun Belt and where the Pac-12 is at in relation to the Big 12. So, yes, things are not going good in Pac-12 country this year outside of the one shot that they've got, and that is one-loss Oregon at making the playoff. Another thing that gets talked about a lot here is TV numbers. And I do want to stress that before I give you some of these TV numbers, even though these are going to look fairly favorable for the Big 12, I always just think, look, TV numbers are so different and they fluctuate so much based on a lot of variables. What games you're up against on a week-to-week basis, what network you're actually on, what time the game is. There's so many factors week by week that I think it's a dangerous game to play the comparative TV numbers game, because if you're up against a massive SEC game, if you were up against Texas A&M and Alabama, for instance, a couple of weeks ago when everybody realized that Alabama may go down, you've got no chance and your ratings are going to be hurt, and there's nothing that you could do to control that. So I am going to stress that. But I do think these numbers at least continue that point that, like, hey, we can look at some data points to suggest the Big 12, again, will be very competitive with the Pac-12 and the ACC from even a TV rating standpoint, as well as what they're doing actually on the field. And that will be paramount to what the Big 12's new TV deal is going to be with the new league. And that's always been the biggest hang-up and sticking point here, is how far behind will they fall financially? Well, if these numbers continue to show like this, perhaps there is hope that the Big 12's TV deal can be decent, or at least fairly close to the $37 million per team payout that's going out right now. That's not just the TV, that's with everything, but you're hoping to get that number close to it in total. So again, these numbers come from Jeffrey Fuller, who tweeted these out. JJ Fuller72 on Twitter. I appreciate his work there. Once again, he has numbers for the BYU at Baylor game, which is a future Big 12 conference game. It was on a major network, ABC, and it had 1.44 million viewers. Same day, UCLA at Washington, 2 of the best brands in the Pac-12, had 1.53 million viewers. So 1.44, 1.53, and that's really like mid-level Big 12 brands. BYU, once they're in the league, probably that top-level Big 12 brand, but like a top level and a mid to low level. And that's, look, no offense, Baylor, K-State would be in the same category, but a top-level Big 12 brand versus a mid to lower level Big 12 brand, and then 2 top-level Pac-12 brands in UCLA and Washington there, and the numbers are really pretty comparable. Some other numbers that he laid out. UCF at Cincinnati got a 1.37 million number on a major network. ABC, not too far off again from that Pac-12 number of 1.53. And if you want the ultimate, like, hey, look at this number from earlier in the year, it's BYU Boise State on ABC, which pulled in 2.24 million earlier a couple of weeks ago. That was like 3 weeks ago at this point, I believe, that we had that game. So again, a whole host of factors can go into that, but BYU Boise, that pulled a really big number. So again, I stress, dependent on a number of different factors. And hey, if there's something I'm missing here about what these games are up against, leave it in the comments. Let me know. But I am just going into this with the understanding that this can really fluctuate. But much like my point with all of this in terms of conference strength, what they can do on the field, it's not been, hey, the Big 12 is slam dunk in the new school Big 12 going to be better than the ACC, Pac-12, etc., whatever. It's just that it can be very competitive. And the idea seemed to be laughed off or just shrugged off that the Big 12 would ever even be competitive at that point. So that is what we're trying to prove, and that is why I continue to give you all of these numbers. Hey, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I'd encourage you to do so. I talk college football every day on this channel, mainly Big 12 football and conference realignment, but you can also find more information on Twitter at JL Kurtz if you want to follow me there. And again, certainly please do subscribe to the channel, click the alert bell, and make sure you know every time I'm coming on and every time I'm going live, which is happening 2 times per week. And I promise you guys, I'm working to getting back on that same schedule. My life has been in chaos with a move right now. So I digress. Appreciate you guys checking out this video. I will talk to you soon, and take care.